his death brought a lot of sadness to a lot of people. And what's the thing with cigars?
Oh, he loved to smoke cigars. That was one of his favorites. And you know, cigars, I don't know if you know about cigars, but there's a special cigar cutter that cuts them, and Mrs. Strauss would often be the ones that cut the cigars for him.
Are there cigars in the exhibit?
No, his personal ones, but in his...
Are there cigars?
In his display, we've recreated his room, their room. We have a cigar on display.
Right. One?
Yes.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. That's why he's bringing it up.
Maybe he wants another.
Mm-mm. I'm here to look at the, are there pictures of the room?
Yes.
Look at the pictures and see if there's not some sort of a receptacle with cigars in it.
A picture of him.
I mean, a picture of the actual room. Is there a
Oh,
picture of the
picture of his
actual room?
Yes, there are.
Look for the receptacle with the cigars in it.
Because in his room, we do have an ashtray there. We have, it's on the ashtray.
This is not exact, it doesn't seem like it's a humidor. It looks like it's, you can see through it. What I'm seeing in my head, you can actually see through it, and it's got cigars in it. It's got an emblem on it. It's pointing at you and saying, you like everything to be as precise as he did. And that's the reason he's letting you know that he had a glass jar with his emblem, some emblem on it. I'm just going to give you what he says to me. A glass jar with an emblem on it, if you want it like it was, some sort of glass jar, and I don't know what the emblem is. It looks like it's almost a delta of some sort, a delta shape of some sort. I don't know what that is. I'm just going to tell you, 6 cigars.
6.
I don't know why.
We'll get 6 cigars, I promise you that.
He says you guys have got it right. You got it right. You know all the stories. What's the Strauss-Astor connection?
Oh, well, the Strausses were, 48 millionaires on board Titanic. They all kind of ran in the same circles.
Yeah.
And of course, they would have known each other.
Yeah.
They're from New York. Mr. Astor owning pretty much
Yeah.
a quarter of New York's real estate.
Yeah.
And Mr. and Mrs. Strauss own Macy's department store.
Yeah.
The Astors. He's the Astor part of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel.
Yeah.
So many of the people who would shop at Macy's would come on trips and stay at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel.
Yeah.
And they would have had conversations on the Titanic, perhaps even sat at the same dinner table together.
And what do you think Strauss thought of Astor?
Not very much.
Thought he was an ass.
Yeah.
An egotistical ass. it doesn't take a stretch of the imagination to know that he was undoubtedly Jewish, correct?
Yes.
And he calls him a Ganef. Who knows Yiddish? Anybody in the room? No Ganef? You know the word? You know the word? Thief.
What is it?
Thief. He's like a cheat and a thief.
Oh, he's calling Mr. Astor that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's partly right, yes. If you look across the board, how he gained some of his properties wasn't always in the most upstanding way. We'll just say that. Probably one of the reasons he doesn't really think too highly of him is, you know, he had the great love for his wife, Isidore and Ida. But Mr.
Astor was a philanderer.
Well, he had just divorced his wife of 26 years to marry an 18-year-old. Now, Mr. Astor was 47. The new bride is 18. He's just divorced the wife of 26 years to marry her. So,
Hoorah.
yes. In comparison to the great love story of Isidore and Ida, I'm sure he didn't smile too heavy on that.
They both like that these are together on this table. I think that I don't think they had a lot of interaction. They don't feel like they had a lot of interaction, these two. But whatever interaction that they had was affable and nice.
They would have been civil to one another, and they came from, you know, the same beginnings. Unsinkable Molly Brown, Margaret Brown, came from nothing, poor. And so did Mr. and Mrs. Strauss. They didn't start out as millionaires. They started out, in fact, very, very poor, and worked their way up and became the owners of Macy's department store. So they came from both similar humble beginnings.
There's a ton of energy on this ring still. You guys watch John Savas on television as far as Haunted Collector goes, there's still a ton of energy connected with this ring. It almost vibrates. And I asked in my head, I was trying to have a conversation with whatever energy was attached to this ring and hopefully speak to Mr. Strauss and ask about his death. Was it horrific? Was it painful? Was it, who died first? You know, how that happened? We'll not discuss that. We'll flatly not discuss. And I've asked 2 or 3 times, tell me about how it was to perish on the Titanic, and I've asked those specific questions. Doesn't want to talk about that. Doesn't at all want to talk about the death aspect of it. The most important thing to remember, and he's glad that that's what you stress here and that people have remembered, he said he was better looking than the man that played him in the movie. And I think that's lovely that they know things about pop culture and things like that. It's better looking than that man that played me in the movie. The important thing to remember is the fact that they were together. Doesn't matter who died first, who died last, how they died, anything like that. Now, the movie showed them in bed together, and I read somewhere that they were actually supposedly sitting together.
Mhm. There were several, after Titanic went down, there were 2 inquiries, Senate inquiries, one in America and one in England. People were called to testify about their actions and things that they saw. It was all under oath. And there were numerous people who testified saying that the last time they saw them, that they were sitting in deck chairs on the boat deck, watching as people got into the lifeboats, and they were holding hands, very calm, watching.
Correct. Correct. Someone gave him a blanket.
They had white Star Line tartan blankets, and the deck chairs they would have been sitting in were first-class promenade deck chairs, and you couldn't come and just sit down in one of those. You had to reserve them the night before, and you had to pay a fee to sit in those. And you would also be provided with a blanket. So even though maybe they didn't reserve theirs for this night, of course they didn't, there would have been white Star Line blankets. They're available there, probably around or in the city.
These are amazing. I've never done a lot of psychometry before, but these have like palpable energy attached to them. So nothing's going on as far as I'm going to ask questions. We haven't had any jumps in anything in the meters or anything.
Yeah, there was one, Robbie caught, what was it you caught, Robbie? Robbie. Oh, he's listening back to us. When you were talking about Molly Brown, he got an EVP, he was doing live EVPs. And Robbie.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he got his headphones on, too. Will you tell Chip what you heard when you were talking about Molly Brown, you were doing live EVPs and you played it back and what?
Yeah, I was, when you were talking about Molly Brown, I was recording and I called Steve over because we both, it sounds like somebody's going, ha, 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 like that. And it's like real close to me. I was just recording again, and when I was rewinding, and when she was talking about the lawn chairs, and she said, you've got to pay to rent the chairs. I heard something go, like they're like upset about that or whatever. So I thought that was kind of, I'll rewind it to the laughing, and I'll let Chad play it. Give me a second.
But other than that, did anyone get any spikes or?
Chad,
Yeah.
my meter has been going to red
Oh, really?
the whole time. Ours has been going off too over here.
It's when you were talking about Molly Brown, not liking speed. There was a lot going off that.
The only thing that I thought was kind of odd was I kept hearing like scratching noises on the microphones. We're not hearing it now.
Yeah.
And I came over here to touch it, and it was almost this sound. You hear it? But not that loud. I mean,
It sounded to me like it was scratching on the wall.
yeah, and then somebody said it was coming out of the speakers, so I didn't know if it was, but as soon as this came out, it stopped. So at first I thought that I thought you had like an alarm thing on it, and it was giving off a radio signal and was affecting this. And that's what I thought it was, but when they took it off, we didn't hear it anymore, which was really weird. So I don't know, there was something interfering with this microphone, but once the veil was taken off of that, it stopped, which is really odd. Do you feel most of the energy is from the ring?
From my perspective, I would say that at this point in time, there's more of an attachment for me to the ring this evening than there is to this object. She's just kind of like, yeah, that was something I owned. It was, this was something that was very personal and profound to him. So maybe Margaret Brown is like, yeah, that was sweet, that was nice, and pull me through and whatever, but if we had something that was maybe she would be really like gung-ho over some other artifact if we brought, but she's kind of like, yeah, that belonged to me, that was cool, that was really sweet, and I took it down, and I guess it got me through, I guess it worked, but,
Well, she gave it away.
yeah.
She gave it to the captain of the rescue ship as a thank you gift for taking such good care of them on the rescue ship.
Maybe passing that, paying it forward there. The next guy, you're out at sea, maybe you're gonna need it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Were you able to find that?
Yeah.
Real quick, maybe we can play it
Well-
next to the microphone. I mean, we can play it. Can you do that? Yeah, because we'll have to move. Or no, just play right through here. Does it have a speaker on it?
It does, but.
Yeah, just put it. No, this is power. You can play it up next to that. And we're gonna hear a ha ha ha.
Oh, maybe it doesn't have a speaker. Oh, hold on a second.
Good job, Robbie. That's great. Yeah, it's all in suspense here. When you explain this to me, Chip, and I know I don't understand this. I don't have psychic abilities. I can feel things. Like you feel it in your gut. Like walk that way, don't walk that way. You feel weird about things. But Chip, like when you feel the energy, do you see it?
Sometimes.
Is it? What does it look like? Can you put it in our eyes?
It's almost like an afterthought. It's almost like a sense and a knowing that you know, but you don't know exactly how you know. When I was touching the talisman, I could see her and she looked in my head, the image that I saw of her in my head, of Mrs. Brown in my head, and she's pretty adamant. Call me Molly, and it doesn't give what you want to call me Molly, but she's like,
Hear it? Every time we talk about the mall, it's like somebody's scratching their fingernails on this. Yeah, but it's on this. It's
she
listen,
likes being called Mrs. Brown.
it's the same sound.
Yeah.
It's like somebody touching this microphone.
She likes being called Mrs. Brown. Can you do that again? If I talk about you and Margaret Brown and Molly Brown, Mrs. Brown, she really likes to be called that. Can you do that if that's you doing this on the microphone, on this thing again? Can you do that again? Of course not. I'm not like a trained SEAL. I'm not doing this. But she likes being called Mrs. Brown. And this, in my head with him, I just see this lovely man that had more money than God, but not being an egotistical, selfish ass. He really feels like he was pretty level and kind of humble almost. Is that what we know about him?
Yes. They were both very, very humble people. They had all the money in the world pretty much. They owned an entire department store. And Mrs. Strauss is found one day on the decks sewing a hole in one of his socks. And somebody asked her and said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm sewing a sock." They said, you have a whole store. You can buy 1,000,000 socks. She said, "I know. You can buy any sock. But this one, I can do for him. This is going to touch him." She would rather do it for him.
Interesting.
Were you able to find that
Yeah.
spot? Yeah. Okay, so let's see. And you're gonna hear her laughing?
You good? I'll rewind a little bit back further so you can hear what's going on. I was not moving.
Now, how he heard that, he has headphones on his recorder as he's recording. He can hear in real time when the EVPs are happening. So he'll have headphones on. He was sitting next to Steve, who was not recording, asked Steve, "Did you just hear that?" Because you don't know if that's really somebody in the room laughing or not. And then when you play it back, obviously it was dead quiet in the room. And that's how he was able to capture that.
Right.
And it's definitely a woman.
That's a woman laughing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
And then the next one is 16 seconds long, but listen to her right after she talks about the chair.
What are we gonna
Wait a
hear?
minute, hold on.
What is this?
You'll hear it, hold on.
That's even better because we're not waiting to hear, you know?
Oh, no, I mean, trust me, you'll hear it when it's 16 seconds.
We're first class on deck chairs, and you couldn't come just sit down in the chairs. You had to reserve them the night before, and you had to pay a fee to sit in those. You also
Did you hear it?
Yeah, it's like she's up kind of like I've got to pay like,
Like disgusted with.
yeah, exactly.
Like somebody would go, "Ah."
Can we do it again?
We're first class on deck chairs, and you couldn't come just sit down in the chairs. You had to reserve them the night before, and you had to pay a fee to sit in those. You could also be provided with a blanket.
Yeah. That laughing though,
The laughing's great.
yeah. It is time to move to the next locations. Awesome, Chip. This is exciting, and thank you, Mary, and for letting us. This is a really historic event. This has never been touched by anyone who's never worn white gloves, except for probably the rescue people. That's probably the last time it was touched. And it's been here, how long?
Probably 5 years.
It's amazing. It's really something. Now, we did get some, we recorded some feet. It sounded like little children's feet slapping on the concrete, like running. Chip was able to pick up with one of the guests. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't a guest. It was one of the girls that works here. Didn't know, I've never even met the girl. Chip's never met the girl. We walked into the room, the women were saying that there's a child behind, like they kept feeling there was a child. And Chip went up and described every single thing that the lady was having an experience with, like how the child touched the girl's hand and everything. The girl started crying. Is she in here?
Hi.
Is that you? Oh, okay. Yeah,
Hi.
yeah, I mean, you were in tears. It was pretty crazy because she hit everything that you could come up here and tell me about it real quick.
This is first classmate Sarah. Howdy.
Well, my experience here, whenever I would walk through, I'm a mother, I have a 3-year-old little girl, and I know what a little hand feels like on my hand. And sometimes I would walk through and I'd feel little fingertips start touching my hand. And when I get to certain parts, I would feel something grab my hand just a little bit harder. And the way that he touched my hand was exactly how she touched my hand. I feel like when she's with me, she feels like she's safe, and she feels like she's protected. And there are certain things that he said that hit a little hard for me because he said that she calls me mommy. It goes off every time. And anytime somebody's around me, I'm really cool apparently. So,
Yeah, it was weird. And you were standing next to her, and it was like the child was hiding behind. Chip was even saying they're hiding behind you.
And then when she wasn't in the room when we were leaving, I stood in the same place that we were when you started reading her, and it went off again.
Yeah, it happened again. And then from what I understand, other groups are experiencing a little bit. This is the very first time, so this is kind of the first time. We don't know what we're going to expect here. We just have personal experiences from people that work here and from past guests that have been here. No one's ever been able to actually take equipment in and record and take photos inside and try to investigate. So let's keep the night going. Stuff is going on in here, which is great. We're getting laughs, we're getting strange noises, we're getting footprints. Somebody got touched too? Is it someone got?
She just went to the bathroom.
Oh, okay, yes, she got touched.
Okay.
So, yes,
I had the little stick man dancing on my head.
the stick man
Yeah,
dancing.
there was
Here?
there was
Oh, does somebody
something-
have a
there was
connect?
something in the discovery room because right after we saw it on his camera,
Oh,
it
you
was
have
like
a
it looked like it
portable?
was
Oh, that's
dancing on
cool.
her head. But as soon as he walked in, he said, "You know, you got something right over there." It was right in the same
Nice.
area she was standing.
Well, let's do this. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get back into our groups. The elevator is a little slow, so if some of us want to take the back stairs, it's easier going down than up. So if we want to get into groups, it will be a little